So, general election campaign must be underway. Do you know how I know that? Because the media campaign to smear Corbyn, to slander Corbyn, to insult him, to belittle him, to berate him, to paint him as an anti-Semite and a traitor and a working class traitor and all this other stuff. It's started. Full swing already. We're 1 week in and it's begun. We've got about 4 or 5 weeks to the election and it has begun. The campaign to absolutely discredit the man by any means necessary. The Sun has an article today that says Corbyn didn't attend a Remembrance Day, Labour Party Remembrance Day event. And that must mean he's a disgrace. He couldn't be bothered, is the actual words that they used. Corbyn couldn't be bothered to attend this Labour Party Remembrance fundraiser. Entirely not true. Corbyn, yesterday, when the fundraiser was taking place, was in Yorkshire, talking to the people affected by the floods out there, while your Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, locked sick formers away in a common room so he didn't have to talk to them when he visited their school. Corbyn was out in Yorkshire talking to the people who have lost their homes, who have had their property swept away by floodwater. Actually out there communicating, like with Grenfell Tower. The next day he was down there, talking to the victims, talking to the people who lost loved ones, the people who lost their homes and their livelihoods, while Theresa May turned up and stood around and looked nice with some police for some photo opportunities and then buggered off. Corbyn was actually doing something substantial, something that meant something. They make it out like he was lazing on the benches in the Commons. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that was Jacob Rees-Mogg a few weeks ago. Now, I'm not one of these guys who believes that Corbyn is divine, he's holy, he's a god, he could never do or say anything wrong, he's perfect, there's nothing wrong with him. I criticise the man quite regularly, particularly on his Brexit stance. I don't think he's holier than thou and he's perfect and everything. I don't think the Labour Party is a perfect institution. I don't think that it's, there's nothing wrong within the Labour Party at all. All this kind of thing. I'm simply a Labour voter and I support Corbyn because he endorses many of the same policies that I believe in. I do not believe for a second that if it was any other leader than Corbyn, anybody else leading the Labour Party, that all this media campaign against him would be in place. Ed Miliband, if Miliband or Blair or Brown had some members in the party who were accused of anti-Semitism, it would not be made out so that the leader, Ed Miliband, Blair, Brown, was anti-Semitic themselves. That would not be the case. It simply wouldn't be mentioned. It would be a bit, oh, that's naughty, and that would be, the media would just forget about it. Particularly since most of these people who were accused of anti-Semitism are quite low level in the grand scheme of things. In the establishment of the Labour Party, their councillors or their potential councillors or their potential MPs, they're not high up there. They're not deputy leader, they're not shadow chancellor, they're quite, medium to low level. And the accusations that's levelled against them of anti-Semitism aren't really explicit. It's quite underhand, it's quite sort of sketchy, questionable, if you will. So, for instance, the councillor who called someone Shylock and then claimed he didn't know Shylock was an anti-Semitic term to use. It's not explicit anti-Semitism. You could argue he was a bit ignorant of anti-Semitic attitudes and anti-Semitic phrases and things that anti-Semites say, anti-Semitic sayings. So, for me, that's really all Labour is guilty of in terms of anti-Semitism. They're guilty of being a bit ignorant in some fringe instances about anti-Semitic attitudes. Well, you've got to get that in any large party. Any large organisation is going to attract some people who are going to make shady statements, and you can question those statements, you're perfectly entitled to, and then you need to decide whether that person is explicitly anti-Semitic, and this is where the catch lies. If I thought for a second that Corbyn was explicitly anti-Semitic, I would not endorse him. If I thought for a second that anybody within Labour who was explicitly anti-Semitic has been protected by Corbyn, or has been saved face by Corbyn, or who hasn't been investigated despite Corbyn and the leader of the Labour Party knowing about their anti-Semitism, I would not endorse them. I would not vote Labour. As it stands, I think there are some people in Labour who have got some questionable views and said some questionable things, and it's a bit sketchy and they're a little bit ignorant. I do not believe Labour has a problem with deep-seated, institutional anti-Semitism. It simply doesn't. That is the facts. Every single case where a person has been explicitly anti-Semitic in their capacity as a member of the Labour Party is either under investigation right now or they have been expelled or suspended from the party. An anti-Semitic party would not expel or suspend anti-Semites. It just wouldn't happen. So that's enough about anti-Semitism. I can talk about that all day. Do you remember a couple of years ago when they said Corbyn didn't bow deeply enough at the centre path? By the way, he will be at the centre path tomorrow. So I don't see what the big deal is. He wasn't at a Labour fundraiser yesterday for remembrance because he was somewhere else doing something important. He wasn't lazing around, taking coke, having a drink, sleeping with some hookers. He was doing something else. That is reasonable enough. But of course, some will have you believe it's because he's a traitor. He's a working class traitor. He hates Britain. No, if he hated Britain, why would he be a fucking MP here for 40 years? They will make it out like he just didn't want to do it, when in fact, he probably would have done it if he could, but he was somewhere else. And remember a couple of years ago, they said he didn't bow deeply enough. Oh well, newsflash, 70-year-old man can't quite bow that deeply. It probably fucking hurts him to bow that deeply. And they said his poppy wasn't on straight. And before that, it was his suit's a bit shabby. He doesn't wear a proper tie. It's all pathetic. It's shallow. It's unspeakable. You would never, ever, ever have got this kind of treatment suffered by Miliband, Blair, Brown. It wouldn't have happened. If anybody in the Labour Party, I dare say they were, run by Blair, Brown and Miliband, had said something anti-Semitic or any of that kind of thing, the media would have said, oh, that's a bit cheeky. And they would have forgotten about it. But because it's Corbyn, if Miliband didn't bow that deeply, or he just sort of went like that at the centre path, or his poppy was a bit skew with, I dare say that the Daily Mail and the Sun wouldn't have made a massive deal out of it as they did with Corbyn. This is about his policies. This is about what he stands for. And the owners of the Sun, Rupert Murdoch, etc., and the owners of the Daily Mail, Viscount Rodney, they are rich and powerful, wealthy. They have millions in the bank. They're based in tax havens. And this is the important bit. This is what Corbyn wants to clamp down on. He wants to close the loopholes. So you can't stash your money away in a tax haven somewhere, and you will have to pay your fair share. These are the people that don't like Corbyn for that reason, so they will use their influence in the media to slander him by any means necessary. Most of the MPs who criticise him are guilty of the same thing, and that's Labour or Tory. They're millionaires, they're landlords. Corbyn will make it so, your home has to be deemed legally fit for human habitation before you can move in. He'll clamp down his pledge to clamp down on dodgy landlords, on corporate CEOs who dodge their taxes. These are the people who are going to throw everything at him now because they want to make sure he is not elected. As I said, I don't believe Corbyn is perfect. He probably could have dealt with the anti-Semitism issue within Labour a hell of a lot better. He could have reached out to the Jewish community. But then you've got the argument of, would that even make the media? I don't know. But he could have tried. He could have done a little bit more to try and wash off this image that he's an anti-Semite. Because I don't believe for a second that he's anti-Semitic. Oh, he shared a mural on Facebook. Anybody can share something on Facebook and not look at it properly. Anybody can say something in just in passing, or by a slip of the tongue, or by just offhand, and not realise that they're making an anti-Semitic statement, or not mean to make an anti-Semitic statement. But the problem is, the media has latched on to the Labour Party under Corbyn now, and every little instance they can find of him or somebody in his party saying something anti-Semitic, or saying something that they can twist to make it look like they're criticising soldiers, or he's slagging off the army, or whatever it is, they will latch onto it and they will bleed it dry for all it's worth. Under Blair, under Brown, under Miliband, it wouldn't have happened. Simply wouldn't have happened, because it wouldn't have been credible. But the rich and powerful, the media, the wealthy, the CEOs, the corporate bosses, the big bankers, they're terrified of Corbyn. And anti-Semite is a hard label to get rid of. It's one of those things where if somebody says, I'm not racist, you immediately assume they're racist, because if you weren't racist, you wouldn't have to say you're not racist. So it's one of those sort of things. It's a dodgy issue to work your way out of. You know, I don't sympathise with the IRA. Well, once that's thrown at you, once that is branded on you, it's there for a long old time. It's hard to shake, and that's why they're doing it. This is why they're doing it. They are, for want of a better word, virtue signalling. They're pretending that they're all about, you know, equality with Jewish people and all this kind of thing. And they're pretending they're for supporting our troops, etc., etc. When in reality, all they're for is their own vested interests. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.